The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Hello, Cherries fans, and welcome back to another Dean Court social here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Now, do us a favour, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell button below. It helps our channel to grow. Of course, big shout out at the start as well, as always, to Touchpoint Telecoms at touchpointTelecoms.co.uk for your telecoms needs. Anywhere from Everton to Eastleigh, get in contact with Mark and the team. And, of course, Dental on the Banks at dentalonthebanks.co.uk. If you need your teeth sorted, get in contact with them at dentalonthebanks.co.uk. And also, we are the Talksport Fan Network AFC Bournemouth channel of choice. So good to see you all here. And hello to all the Everton fans as well. You're more than welcome. But, Mr. Matthew Harrison, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, all good. It's nice to have a quick game to try and turn things around. Quick game, obviously, from Saturday to Tuesday. So, yeah, let's hope that we can, get a result in this up and coming game because only 1 point out the last 12. From the form we were having, isn't great. But again, we just look ahead to the next game now, and we go again. So, yeah, Everton's, it can be a bit of a funny side this season, which I'm sure we'll discuss very shortly. But yeah, disappointing from to be 2-0 up and lose 3-2 against Sunderland. Very disappointing. But credit must be given to them. But yeah, the referee was a little bit, I suppose you could say, one-sided. To a certain degree. Probably a lot of people may disagree with that, but I think from our perspective, I think the referee was. But yeah, we just got to go again, haven't we? And that starts with facing Everton on Tuesday night.
He lost complete control of the game. To be honest, the referee. So the least said about him, the better. Of course, really disappointing. It looked like we come out the traps fast. 2-0, always a dangerous scoreline. But we've got an instant chance to put it right against Everton at Dean Court. And, hopefully, fingers crossed, we can do that. And, of course, they didn't have a very successful Saturday either, did they?
No, only managed to catch the highlights of that one. But yeah, fair play to Newcastle. I think they were 1-0 up within, what was it? Seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Couple of quick goals, weren't there, over the weekend? I think Foden's goal was a quick one for City, wasn't it? And so was, Newcastle's goal. Yeah, it's. I think their home form has been a bit funny this season, hasn't it? Everton.
It's been a bit weird. To be honest, they're a very strange team that we're coming up against. I'm just having a look at, of course, their fixtures and the results. The opening day of the season, they were beaten 1-0 against Leeds United at Elland Road. Beat Brighton You wouldn't have expected that 2-0 at home for their opening day of the season at their new stadium. It does look very nice. Beat Wolves 3-2 away from home. But to be honest, Wolves put up a real good fight in that one. And it probably showed, considering what Wolves have done since, probably Everton's frailties. 0-0 against Aston Villa, good result. Not bad. Got
Yeah,
beat in the
yeah,
Merseyside derby. West Ham 1-1. 2-1 against Crystal Palace. Again, a side who are very good. Man City and Spurs, they got beat by. It's a real mixed bag. I just don't It depends, I think, for me, what Everton side turns up. Has David Moyes got it under control? He's got it under a lot more control than what Sean Dyche did. Are they really particularly a good side? Honestly don't think that they're a great side. I think that they can be got at. They've got better. They had to be honest, under Sean Dyche. And to be honest, David Moyes worked miracles last season, in my honest opinion, keeping them up because we could still be playing now. In our 1-0 win at home, of course, Sean Dyche's last game, and Everton still wouldn't have scored. They probably still wouldn't have had a shot on target because they were that poor that game, in all honesty. And I think Everton fans will probably forgive me for saying that. Um, they've improved, but are they really the level where Everton fans expect them to be? Most definitely not. And it's shown. And like you say, they have had a whole mixed bag of results at home. Um, they've won 3 of the games. They've got beaten 2 of the games and drawn 2 of the games at home. So they're not prolific at home, and away from home, they've been not particularly the greatest, all bar. And I've got to make this point, take out the Wolves result because, of course, Wolves aren't particularly very good. And of course, they drew at Sunderland as well, the Stadium of Light, at the start of this month. Of course, start of November, I should say. But Manchester United beating them 1-0 away from home, was probably the highlight of their season so far. And shows they're not in really a good place, Matt.
they may not be at the minute, but I think slightly different to yourself. I think their squad is stronger than when Dyche had them.
Oh,
I
definitely.
think there's been some good additions that they've made with, like the Tyler, is it Dibley?
Tyler Diblin, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
formerly
Diblin.
of South. No, well, the
Um,
club we don't talk about.
yeah, well, yeah, Southampton are known for producing good youngsters, and
Mhm.
he's their latest one, isn't he?
Yeah.
And so I think they've got. When you look through the squad, I think the squad's stronger than when Dyche and Lampard and
Mhm.
player managers like that were there. I think David Moyes is a good manager. They're not going to go down.
No.
They look like they are in a bit of a funny patch, but again, it's a long season, isn't it? And I think across the season, they're not going to set the world alight, but at the end of the day, they will be stable. They won't be, relegated or anything like that. I don't think.
Mm.
I mean, there's several players that we will touch on, shortly. But when you look back at the stats from the Newcastle game, you can kind of see where some of their issues are.
Yeah.
And with shots, for example, they had 9 shots across that 90 minutes, with only 2 on target.
Mm.
And it looks like they struggle a bit with possession at home as well. Normally, traditionally, I suppose the home side tend to have the most possession when you look at it, sort of traditionally.
Yeah.
But against Newcastle, Newcastle had about 5% more possession than they did. I think it was something like 47 to 52 or something like that percent
Mm.
um, possession. So you can see that they're not, in terms of shots, they're not really taking their chances at the minute, which may help us. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
going to have a couple of suspensions and be slightly weaker alongside the injuries we've got at the minute as well come
Yeah.
Tuesday night. So yeah, when you look back at the stats against Newcastle, like I say, 9 shots and only 2 on target does show a little bit that in front of goal at the minute that they're lacking a little bit. But I was quite surprised with the Newcastle game that Beto, who will look a little bit more in detail a little bit later on, was actually on the bench. I think if I remember in the highlights, he come off the bench. Which for me, I think he is for me their number 9. He is their striker. He is their main focal point up front. And the player that did play up front, who was that?
Barry, yeah.
I think he's struggling there a little bit. I don't think he's scored a goal this season.
No, he hasn't. He's just. It's a very, very, very weird, a weird side that we're coming up against. On Tuesday night. They have improved. I agree with you on that, but I just don't think they're really at the level. I just don't think they're at the level. The one player that of course, always has a good game against us, and I've left him out for a reason because, of course, we're going to talk about our 3 to watch. Ilmian and Jai. I think he's a little bit of the heartbeat. And he's always had quite a good game against us. Of course, if we go back to, and sorry, Everton fans, I'm going to mention it, the 3-2 win we got up at Goodison Park last season. When he was actually taken off, Everton's impact, they just fell apart. They collapsed like a stack of cards.
They did. I mean, at the time, I remember thinking, why are you taking your best player off? Not that it bothered us really, but at the same time, you look at it from a footballing view, he was running things for them, and like you say, as soon as, and similar probably to what Nuno did for West Ham when he took Wilson off. If you take a certain player off, and this is where managers' judgment has to be so right sometimes, because if you take that particular player off, like the situation you're mentioning, like you say, things just turned completely the opposite way for Everton. And like you say, he was the heartbeat that day.
Yeah, it was really, really bizarre substitution. Don't get me wrong, Sean Dyche has done well in his career, and he'll continue to do well. But for some reason, it just didn't click at Everton, and I think his hands were a little bit tied, but at the same time, making stupid decisions like that was, of course, it worked in our favour. He could do that all day long, against us, but, really kind of signalled with, the problems. But let's come back onto ourselves. Let's stop talking about Everton for the moment, because we kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit as well. Of course, we got 3 players suspended for this game. Not ideal. 2 of the midfielders, 1 at the back. The one at the back, I think, we could easily slot and change that. But of course, we've had a bit of a headache, and we'll do the lineup at the end. But what did you make of the mistakes made at Sunderland regarding discipline?
I suppose in some respects, a little bit of our cool. We lost a little bit of our cool. Brooksy was quite fiery, wasn't he?
He was, but it was unnecessary.
Yeah, but I think was it the last game against West Ham? I think he sort of got himself into a situation there, didn't he, where he sort of fired things up a little bit. There's nothing wrong with having a bit of passion, but sometimes you do need to just have that little element of control. When you do have players on for bookings around this time of year, it's always a sort of a squeaky bum time, isn't it? With picking up that 5th one, because before that cut-off date, you are going to be suspended. I think the positive, if we can take a positive from it rather than a negative, I think I'd much rather see these 3 suspend. Well, Cook's going to be suspended for 3 games unless they appeal and win, but he's definitely going to miss the Everton game. So, I think I'd much rather see a Senesi and Brooks suspended for this up-and-coming clash with Everton rather than having them suspended against Chelsea.
Agree.
I think, Brooksy, whether he starts or comes off the bench, will make that impact, can make an impact against Chelsea. Senese's been in great form this season. Whether he's partnered Diakite or whether he's partnered Milo, he's been, really at that centre of that defence, isn't he? And the key man this season in that back line. So, obviously Diakite will come in. Milo will probably come in, and they can do a job against Everton, I'm sure. I think for Chelsea, I would like to see Senesi back in there. So, for him to take a suspension against Everton, I think it is a plus from a negative. Cook's elbow is one of them, isn't it? Now, for me, I think it's kind of 50-50 from a referee's point of view in terms of would you give that as a red or not? Now, in my opinion, his elbow is up and it's in a raised position like that. Is it intentional? If it was more that kind of motion, you would say that's intentional. There's an argument for and for it. I think probably in hindsight, if you're, as a professional footballer, if you raise your elbow in that kind of position, I think you run that risk.
Yeah, I completely agree.
That's a fair way of putting it.
I don't think he intended to do that, though.
No, but then at the same time, you run that risk. You are running that risk. And I think, unfortunately, you may have another referee that would interpret it differently, but then again, you might have VAR that would overrule that decision. So when you look at it, it's the same with, challenges, certain types of challenges. If you go in for a certain type of challenge, you do run that risk.
Exactly.
Or if you run the risk of taking that player, you may risk the booking. If you go and do like a sliding tackle in the box, there's always going to be that element of risk with those kind of challenges. And it's no different with the elbow when the elbow's up. I mean, there's been so many, controversial decisions over the years about, elbows and, one that always sticks out for me was Shearer in the 98 World Cup when Sol Campbell scored a perfect header against Argentina. And because he's gone and elbowed the old goalkeeper, obviously the goal's ruled out. So you could argue there, back then in this, if that game was played today, Shearer would have been sent off.
Yeah, most definitely.
So at the end of the day, you raise an elbow, you run that element of risk, in my opinion. And I think from a referee's perspective, if I was refereeing a game, and you see an elbow raised like that, you've got to make a decision. And it's disappointing that he's come off the bench and then got himself sent off. You look at Scott. Scott was a sending off waiting to happen.
Exactly.
And I think for Scott that was more. Yeah, that was more because of the conditions, probably.
Yeah.
You've got to be spot on with judging your tackles in that kind of condition, especially if you're going to ground for a tackle. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, Cookie, if the club appeal it, I don't think they will personally.
No, I don't. I can't see it.
Because you run that element of not winning the appeal, and then there'll be an extra. They make a decision on is it 1 or 2 games to add on to that. So do you just take it on the chin and deal with those 3 games without Cookie? I mean, Smithy's fit, Jimenez is fit. You've got Iraola, so in terms of a right back position, there's plenty of cover. It's that midfield element where you've got, your Christie out injured at the minute. That's where we're a bit thin on the ground. So that's where we're going to miss him. But yeah, I think all in all, I would rather the 2 that I mentioned in terms of Senesi and Brooks be suspended for this one than the Chelsea one.
100%. I think, at the end of the day, as we say, Chelsea game is going to be a right challenge. But I think this Everton game, whilst they are going to pose us questions, I'm going into this a little bit more confident. But let's talk about Everton's 3 to watch. We've mentioned Dillman and Jai. Let's go through the 3 that toffees that we think could really make a difference for them. Shall we start off with James Tarkowski, who is, of course, the most difficult one to say?
Let's start off with him. Yeah, why not? It's a good place to start. Let's start from the back and work our way forward. You know what you get with this kind of player. He's had a good, decent career, isn't he? I mean, he was very instrumental at Burnley under Dyche, and at Everton. He seems to be one of the first names on the team sheet along that back four. And I think from what you were saying before we come on air, he seems to be quite liked up there, doesn't he? So he is a good one to pick. I mean, you look at his defensive, his defensive style. He's known for his robust tackling, his positional discipline. He's got good ability as well to read the game, which when you play at the back is a very, very key strength to have. Dominant in the air as well. And he's one of those players, isn't he? That and I think we saw it last season, didn't we? He's good at being aerial threat, not only from a defensive perspective, but also in the opposition's box. I think he can be quite lethal there as well. I think, did he not score an equaliser last year? Was that in the Merseyside derby?
I think so. Yes, it was. Yeah,
with his foot, and he rifled one in right into the roof of the net, if I remember rightly. I've got something like that that's just sticking in my mind.
Yes, he did. I've just done a little quick search on it, and it was a last-minute equaliser against Liverpool.
Yeah, midweek game, if I remember rightly. He does have that sort of thing about his game as well. In both boxes he can be a threat from, and I think that's key when you've got a defender like that can be a threat in both boxes. It's a good attribute to have, because goals should always be contributed from all across the field, really, in my opinion. But look at his clearances and his blocks. Regularly he's among the Premier League leaders in clearances. For blocks, and so he's quite good in terms of his stats. Again, he has leadership style as well, doesn't he? I think he did not captain against Newcastle. I think he's got composure, organisation. He's got captain's abilities. And whether he's got the armband or not, he's a very vocal defender at the back. So, a good pick, that one, I think. When you look at his role,
by the way, he was really, really huge in Burnley getting back into the Premier League under Sean Dyche, and then staying there as well. He was he was a big player, in their promotion. So. A very, very impressive player.
And you can see, how important he is to Everton this season. When you take a look at his stats, 12 games in the Premier League, all starts. He's had 2 yellow cards, no reds. So that's where the discipline comes in. He's fairly disciplined. And this campaign, he's had over 100 clearances, which has averaged a career high defensive rating. So, he's very, very crucial in improving their defensive record. Obviously, we didn't see that against Newcastle, but they're going to be looking at wanting to improve on that imminently, and that starts with Vitality on Tuesday night.
Well, let's go through to the next player, and who have you got next for us?
Next, I believe, is their forward man, Beto. A player that I'm really fond of. I think he's one of those kind of, my opinion, I haven't watched, masses of him, but, when I have seen him play, like against us, and when I've, watched games, Everton games on TV, he comes across as a little bit of in some respects, a bit of an old-fashioned style number 9. When you look at his traits, for example, he's described as a wrecking ball forward. And that is, the typical strong, fast, and difficult to stop defensively. So, he thrives on his direct running instincts, attacking space quickly. He's a counter attack. He's described as a counter attack specialist.
Yes.
Now, whether that is right or wrong, only Everton fans can really answer that one. But he's unpredictable as well. His touch and his decision making can be inconsistent, but defenders will struggle with that kind of anticipation of what's he going to do next.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, another one that only made a cameo really appearance against Newcastle. I think like I say, only saw the highlights. But yeah, a bit strange for me that he didn't start against Newcastle. I think he was the type of player for me that could have upset the defence. Now, Newcastle's defence, they got some really good defenders in there. So I think for me, if I was selecting the side, I think I would have put Beto in there. But hey ho, that's just me from an outsider looking in. But when you look at his strengths and his weaknesses, like pace and power massively. He can unsettle those defence with those unpredictable runs. And yeah, I think what I've read and done a bit of research on him, it said that he uses criticism as a motivation as well, which is an interesting one. And I think probably, in this day and age, probably a great motivation tool, to be fair. So fair play to him for doing that. But they do say weaknesses is inconsistent finishing. Which, is that all down to him? Because the thing is with a striker is it is a team effort. If you're not getting fed the ball and having the ball put where you want it, it's going to be one of them, isn't it? It's going to be Evan Nilsson. Look at Evan Nilsson against Sunderland. Did everything off the ball.
Yes,
fantastic performance. But look at the goal that Adley scored. That's what Evan Nilsson needs to be finishing. And unfortunately, at the minute, Evan Nilsson isn't. So, it does swing in roundabouts when, you see like weakness, his weakness is inconsistent finishing. Is that because he's not getting the ball in the places he wants it? Or is that because he's in a, similar situation to that Ever situation against Sunderland? But yeah. I think on his day, he's a handful.
100%. And last but not least, who have we got?
Last but not least, that's a good one now because I've forgotten his name. What was his name? Oh, what's his name? Used to play for Man City. Yeah, Grealish.
Grealish, who can forget Grealish? I tell you what, such a nice bloke this guy is. I really like Jack Grealish as a person. Hopefully he gets no luck against us.
Yeah, no, he is a lovely guy and someone that I think in some respects would like to see him earn his England place back.
100%.
Because for England, wherever he started, and for me as an impact player for England, he was excellent. And that's why he's at Everton. I think he needs regular game time to be able to do that, and that's what he's getting at Everton. But we know his his strengths, his weaknesses. And what you get with Jack Grealish. This season I think he's played mainly as a left winger. But we know he can drift centrally. He can be that playmaker if needed. He fits into Moyes' system, and I think a lot of this season he's been given that sort of freedom to roam, and he links that midfield to attack, in a beautiful way for him. So, I think his impact at Everton, he has really added that extra dimension to their attacking play when it does go well, and things work out for him. So he's going to be a massive player. When you see him, a marquee loan signing, I think there's a view for him to actually move there permanently. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah.
But, I think he's won everything at City, hasn't he? So, if he was to move on to regular game time, he's going to have medals to show for his career. So, it's not, I'm sure you'd love to stay at City and keep winning things. But, at the same time, I think what's important for him now is to get those game minutes. And that's what he's doing at Everton. And, again, his performances have, reignited that kind of England talk. I think there's been footage of him chatting to Tuchel. I think it was at Old Trafford. He was actually chatting to Tuchel in the tunnel just before the players come out onto the pitch. So I think obviously Tuchel knows that he's there. He knows he's performing again. Next year's World Cup is massive for Tuchel and for us to keep up this. We've had a couple of decent campaigns. We want to keep that going. So, and Grealish could be one of those players that could add a different dimension to England's attack if he's on form. So, definitely one to watch against us.
Do you know what? If he wants a little bit of sun, I think, he's a player that I would like to see in an AFC Bournemouth shirt. So, Bill, if you're listening and you're watching, don't let him go to Everton permanently. He wants a little bit of sun, wants to come down here. The beaches are nicer. Get Jack Grealish in a Cherries shirt. There we are. I say. Honestly, he's one player that I really like to see, and I think actually Iraola could bring him on a bit more. I think he could actually.
Wouldn't disagree with that.
I think he'd be perfect for us. But there we go.
Sell a lot of shirts.
Let's talk through the lineups, and we've got a lot to think about, haven't we, Matt? Because of the suspensions. But here we are. This is the lineup that you picked. Talk us through it.
Yeah. Well, as you can see, obviously Senesi will be suspended. Milo comes in to partner Diakite.
Milo the Savage.
Say again?
Milo the Savage.
Yeah, Milo the Savage. Yeah, he comes in. Smithy, I think, keeps his place. For me, I know Jimenez I'm a big fan of, but he's still developing. He's going to get game time wise here, and I think for this one we need to get back into winning ways. I think Smithy needs to start. Trufair picks himself. The two middlemen, obviously massive goal for Adams against Sunderland. Not known for his goals, but scored a peach there, Beckham-esque as we would say.
Yes.
And Scott, obviously, with Cook and Christie not being available, obviously those two would start. Those two would start anyway. And the forward line, Semenyo, obviously picking himself. He is the star man. Tavs, for me, I think I would like to see Clivert there. But I think Andoni will go with Tavs. And Adley, I think he had a good game defensively and attacking. I thought he was really good against Sunderland. So for me, he will get the nod. Obviously, with the likes of Brooks being out, suspended as well. Evan Nilsson, all the off the ball work has been excellent. He just really needs to get a goal now. He really needs to get a goal for confidence. The goal that Adley finished, should have really been finished by Evan Nilsson. But unfortunately, that was not to be the case. But good to see Adley on the score sheet from a positive. And the bench, there will have to be probably a youngster or two chucked in there. Reece Dottin would probably get the nod for me. But when you look across the bench, very short in terms of central midfield cover. But Hill, in my personal opinion, has the ability to play in that sort of central midfield role if something was to happen. If it was called upon, I think he could do a good job there. The bench, of Dennis Arehu, I think Arehu comes in to sort of make up the numbers, unfortunately. Soler, Clivert, Jimenez, Krupi, Hill, Yunel, and like I said, Reece Dottin. There will be probably some sort of presence from the development side of things on the bench on Tuesday night.
Cool. There we are. Do you agree? Let us know in the comments. It's been a difficult one to actually pick, but there we go. That's what we've gone with. Let's predict this game. And of course, we want to get back to winning ways. We've not been great. 1 point in the last 12. Not where we want to be. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I've got a score in mind, so
I'm going
to go with a 2-1 win Bournemouth.
2-1 for Matt. I'm going to be a little bit more cocky. Everton fans, close your ears. I'm going to go for a 3-0 Bournemouth win. In all honesty, I think defensively, Everton haven't particularly been great. Forward line, as you say, Beto inconsistent. Barry played against Newcastle, started. Elliman Jai come off. the pitch, whether or not it's fitness or whether or not it's a case that they're protecting him for this game. Who knows? But I'm actually confident going into this. I'm confident that Iraola will get a reaction, and I'm going to go for that 3-0 win. I'm going to say Evan Nilsson will get back on the score sheet. That'll be really, really good from him. I think Krupi will get himself on the score sheet, and then Semenyo as well. So the obvious ones that I've named there, but that's what comes to mind. Everton are one of these sides that, it depends what Everton turns up, but based on their form, based on what they've done recently, I am swaying towards the Everton that we saw against Newcastle more than the Everton that we saw against Manchester United. They can turn it on, we know that. And I think we've got enough in midfield just to keep Grealish a little bit quieter. But Jack, if you do fancy some sun, come down here, as they say, it's a bit brighter, a bit sunnier. We've got some palm trees for you, because believe it or not, he is actually a DJ as well, Jack Grealish. I don't know if you ever knew that.
No.
There we are. He could have centre stage at Aruba on a Saturday night, if that's still a thing. Mind, I'm a little bit old now. But guys, thank you again for joining us on the Dean Court Social. Hopefully 3 points. We will have our Cherry Slap show, won't we, Matt?
That'll be out Wednesday night at 7 p.m.
Yes.
We'll be live at 7 p.m. So yeah, cover a very tiny bit of the Sunderland game, but it will 90% of it will be about Tuesday night's game against Everton.
Well, let's get back to winning ways. Up the Cherries. We'll see you in the next one.
Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.